What if Modulo Yuji was in the original Jujutsu Kaisen? Well, in today's video, we'll explore what would happen if he was. But first, let's establish how Modulo Yuji is different from his teenage self. Gege has confirmed that Yuji is biologically frozen somewhere in his physical prime, thanks to Kenjaku's experimentation and Sukuna's influence. At the moment, Yuji is more like a cursed object, with an estimated lifespan of roughly 300 more years ahead of him. His power set has also evolved beyond what it was in the original timeline. While Yuji was always a prodigy when it came to using Black Flash, he can now do it seemingly at will, which is something that not even Gojo could do in the original series. Yuji also has access to more cursed techniques through his connections, with the death of painting wounds, and the ability to use piercing blood is the best example. In Modulo, we see that his piercing blood is capable of clearing an entire building in one shot. Yuji also carries Sukuna's Dismantle and Cleave, which have been engraved into his body as the residue of having been the King of Curse's vessel for years. And on top of all of that, we have the experience built upon years of fighting that makes Yuji near unstoppable. But that's not even the biggest difference in this timeline, because Yuji's psychology has completely inverted. The original Yuji was quick to bond with his new colleagues, and filled with excitement and wonder. We see him lose that spark as the series progresses, but Modulo Yuji takes it a step further. He keeps people at an arm's length, and calls himself an old soldier, often refusing to even attend funerals after battles. He has outlived everyone he ever cared about and genuinely does not want to be involved in anything anymore. Now, for this story to even get off the ground, we need to ask ourselves if Modulo Yuji will even bother swallowing Sukuna's finger. In the original timeline, Yuji eats the finger to save Megumi and the two club members from the cursed spirit that broke out on school grounds. But Modulo Yuji doesn't need the finger to fight. He could clear that school building with blood manipulation before anyone even realizes what's happening. The most likely scenario is that Yuji still swallows it deliberately, because the fingers are powerful cursed objects that will continue to attract cursed spirits to them. So Yuji becomes the vessel again, but this time with 68 years of experience and a psychological armor that Sukuna's manipulation cannot penetrate. Keeping Sukuna sealed in Modulo Yuji's body keeps the architecture of the original story, but now the King of Curses is faced with a completely new problem. He's stuck with a sorcerer that's stronger than him. The original Yuji was naive and inexperienced, but Modulo Yuji has already lived through the worst Sukuna can offer, and this is the most interesting thing about Modulo Yuji being inserted into the original timeline: his resilience and emotional distance. Think about what the early arcs in Jujutsu Kaisen are actually built on. The fearsome womb arc works because Yuji is desperate to prove himself, terrified and completely dependent on the people around him. Gojo is the authority figure who tests him, Megumi is the peer who doesn't quite trust him, and Nobara is the equal who forces him to earn her respect. Modulo Yuji doesn't need Gojo's validation because he's even stronger than Gojo. He doesn't need Megumi's approval. He's already been through a version of this story and watched most of the people he cared about age and die, while he stayed exactly the same. Nobara is actually the key to whether this alternate timeline retains any of its warmth. In Modulo, she's the one character who can actually break through Yuji's armor, and her connection with Yuji is the only thing that can add any depth to our story. Moving on to the Mahito arc, this is where things begin to diverge, as Mahito uses the murder of Junpei to crack Yuji open, exploiting his emotional vulnerability. But Modulo Yuji doesn't even let things get that far out of hand, and he defeats Mahito shortly after they run into each other, saving Nanami a lot of trouble. Now, this has crazy implications for the future, as Mahito is a key character in future arcs, but Yuji knows that the butterfly effect of killing Mahito won't be too serious. The reason for this is that Kenjaku's plan to start the Culling Game precedes Yuji's birth by centuries, meaning that the death of a single cursed spirit couldn't possibly throw it off course. And this brings us to Shibuya, which is where the alternate timeline stops being about what's different and starts being about what's at stake. Kenjaku still wants to take out Gojo as he's the most credible threat to his plan, but this is where things begin to fall apart. His plan at Shibuya only works so well because Kenjaku had better information than anyone else. He picked Geto's face specifically because it's the one face in the world that could make Satoru Gojo hesitate, and that hesitation is all the prison realm needed. But now, not only does Modulo Yuji know Kenjaku's entire plan, he's strong enough to stop it even if Gojo is sealed. So when the curtain descends and the cursed spirits flood the station, Yuji doesn't waste time dealing with the weaker cursed spirits. He goes straight into the train station to fight alongside Gojo. Now, the easy way out of here is to just tell you that Yuji kills Kenjaku and they all lived happily ever after. But let's be real about this. Kenjaku has spent over 1,000 years executing plans with redundancies built into their redundancies. If Yuji's intervention neutralizes the prison realm before it activates, Kenjaku will still have a backup plan to escape Shibuya, even if it means sacrificing the likes of Jogo and Hanami. But now, with Gojo being free and Modulo Yuji being active and informed, there's no way for Kenjaku to launch the Culling Game. And without the Culling Game, Sukuna never gets his window. And this is where we arrive at the most important consequence of this entire alternate timeline. Megumi Fushiguro never gets possessed. Everything Sukuna does in the final arc of Jujutsu Kaisen, from his full resurrection to accessing the 10 Shadows technique directly flows from his possession of Megami's body. But in this timeline, he didn't manage to create that binding vow with Yuji to grant him full control of Yuji's body. Additionally, the possession was only possible because the culling game created conditions for it. Yorozu possessing Tsumiki, and Megami's plan unraveling created that broken state which gave Sukuna the opening he needed to force a finger down Megami's throat and complete the transfer. So now Sukuna is still bottled inside Modulo Yuji and has no viable path to a new host. The King of Curses is trapped, but if Sukuna can't leave the vessel Kinjaku created for him, then his only remaining option is to break the cage itself. Kinjaku still initiates the culling game, awakening marked vessels and newly made sorcerers and tin barrier colonies across Japan. In the original timeline, Yuji, Megumi, Yuta, Hakari, and the others have to split up and play by Kinjaku's rules, but this time everything is different. Gojo is alive, and Modulo Yuji doesn't play defense, and the two of them enter colonies like a cleanup crew. The chaos in the Sendai colony is completely avoided in this timeline thanks to the extra resources the Jujutsu High sorcerers have at their disposal. Originally, Yuta had to work through Ryu, Uro, and Kuro Urushi in a delicate balancing act, but with Gojo active and Modulo Yuji available as a second disaster level force, the incarnated sorcerers never get the room to establish themselves as long-term players. So what does Sukuna do when Megami is unavailable? The culling game is failing, and Yuji is too mentally fortified to manipulate? He goes back to first principles. If he can't escape Yuji, he must turn Yuji into his permanent body. The bath ritual the Uraume prepared already tells us that there are curse techniques that can be used to take control over a host, so that definitely becomes part of his plan. If Megami is off the table, the logical fallback is obvious. Feed Yuji every remaining piece of Sukuna, isolate him, and use a bath-like ritual to overwrite the host from inside out. And suddenly, the culling game arc has a new shape. Kinjaku aims to evolve humanity, while Sukuna uses it to buy enough time for one uninterrupted ritual. Sukuna realizes that the only way to beat Yuji is by exhausting his body and breaking his soul, so Kinjaku and Uraume build the battlefield around that idea. They create a concentrated bath of cursed energy, gathering the remaining fingers, and even Sukuna's mummified corpse itself as the final catalyst. Sukuna stops trying to break Yuji with overwhelming force, and instead persistently nags him as he fights through the culling game. But even this fails, because Sukuna doesn't know what we know. Yuji is explicitly shown as a uniquely engineered vessel with the potential to rival and even surpass Sukuna. Sukuna thought that Yuji could only use this mantle thanks to his influence, but Modulo Yuji has already made the technique his own. He understands Sukuna's soul, his cursed energy, and the exact architecture of being a vessel. And that lets him do something the original Yuji could never have done at this point in the timeline. He turns Sukuna's own existence into a weak point. Yuji lets himself get caught in the ritual, and when Sukuna's fingers and corpse have all been gathered, everything is set to end the King of Curses. Yuji uses Shrine the only way he can use it, and cuts the line between curse and host. Kinjaku realizes too late that this was the worst possible body to trap his Sukuna inside, as Yuji uses his cursed energy to destroy his own body and everything in the vicinity. Sukuna's fingers, Uraume, and Kinjaku are all destroyed alongside Yuji, and the old soldier finally gets to rest in peace. If you like this video, subscribe to my channel for more incredible Jujutsu Kaisen alternate timelines.